Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. We're gonna wait just a few seconds that everyone joins, and then we can start the webinar. Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to our Energy and Nature webinar series. Thanks a lot for joining us today. My name is Manon, and I will be your moderator today. I'm working at the Renewables Grid Initiative in the environmental team. And we started this webinar series to promote good practices from around the world, which reconcile the energy transition with nature protection. Today, the topic on the agenda is how can we unlock a bird-friendly European grid? And we will particularly look into three essential components, which are data, funding, and regulatory framework. I'm very excited to introduce you to our speakers, but before we do that, allow me to make a quick introduction of RGI and a few housekeeping rules. So, on this, I will start with the housekeeping rules. We are recording this webinar. I will send the public link to the recording to all participants after the webinar. I will ask you please to rename yourself using the function with your full name and the name of your organization, because it's always better to know who we are talking to. Please mute your mics if you are not speaking. If you ask a question, I will ask you to, of course, unmute yourself and turn on the video, because it's always nicer. It's always nicer to see each other when we're speaking. In case of questions, you can raise your virtual hand or write your question in the chat, and we will gather the questions and call your name during the Q&A session taking place after all the presentations. So a little bit about RGI, the Renewables Grid Initiative. We are an NGO based in Berlin and a unique collaboration of environmental NGOs and transmission system operators from across Europe. Together, we joined forces to promote fair, transparent, sustainable grid development to enable the growth of renewables in order to achieve full decarbonization. So what does that mean exactly? We bring all those actors together at the same table to agree on positions and projects to work on to push forward the energy transition in a way that works for nature, for the climate, and for people. Within the environmental department at RGI, the one that I'm working at, one of the main topic is bird protection around energy infrastructure. As we know, energy infrastructure can have a negative impact on biodiversity. And this is why we're here today, to actually discuss the challenge of protecting birds along the grid. You might know that to address this, it is crucial to implement the mitigation hierarchy. However, additional points must be considered to establish a truly bird-friendly electricity grid. And those are, for example, access to data on bird mortality, together with data on technical details of the grid infrastructure. And this is fundamental to really understand the risk associated with existing infrastructure and to inform effective mitigation strategies. Another key point to consider is funding for the stakeholders to actively participate and contribute to projects promoting the development of a bird-friendly grid. And finally, robust legislative frameworks at both national and European level are imperative to safeguard bird species from collision and electrocution along infrastructure. And this is what we're going to discuss today. So allow me to present the agenda and the speakers. We will start with the first, after my introduction, obviously, we will start with the first pillar, which is data. And Baptise Doutau from LPO Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, which is a local branch of LPO France. This is the BirdLife partner in France. He will introduce this open source application Avifaune Câbles that aims to gather data on bird mortality along power line, including also technical details and historical grid interventions. On the pillar funding, two speakers will present their respective projects financed by the European LIFE program to reduce bird mortality along the grid. We will have Marek Galis from the Raptor protection Slovakia that will present the project LIFE Danube Free Sky, and myself that will introduce our collaborative project that is called Safe Lines for Birds. Finally, the last pillar will be on regulatory framework, and Maria Paula Delgado from Tragsatec, which is a technical assistant to the Spanish Ministry of Environment, MITECO. She will introduce the legislative framework in Spain, which established measures to protect birds along the grid. And to finish, we will have about 30 minutes for questions and discussions. And also in between the presentations, if we have time, we will have maybe one clarification question if something needs to be clarified before we move on to the next presentation. So please do not hesitate to write your question in the chat while the speakers are giving the presentation, and we will address them during the Q&A session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And before I would like to pass the floor to Baptise, I just want to quickly present to you the first pillar that we will explore today, which is data. And this data is a vital precondition both to avoid the risk in the first place and to mitigate risk where it exists. For an accurate planning of mitigation measures, we need to have a clear picture of, on one part, the technical details of the grid, so which ones are or aren't safe. But we also need to have mortality figures to inform us on where priority is to retrofit. And of course, data on bird presence, because this is always useful to have a bigger picture. This data can be used to create sensitivity or risk maps, for example, which can be very, very useful planning tools for new infrastructure, but also allow grid operators to better implement mitigation strategies, such as implementation of bird flight diverters. Currently in Europe, data is quite fragmented, non-standardized, and in most cases, not so easy to access. So we need to move towards a more standardized collection of data and a more open data approach in sharing between relevant bodies. We have good examples that exist already, obviously. For example, tools to report and collect bird mortality on the ground. There is the German bird portal in partnership with RGI, NABU, and 7 German grid operators. My colleague will share the link in the chat if you're interested. But there is also, for example, observation.org in Belgium to report bird presence. But the application that we're gonna discuss today and that my colleague Baptise will present, the Avifaune Câbles, combines detailed information on mortality, the grid interventions, and the type of lines and pylons that are existing. So this is really essential to have a comprehensive approach of the issue. So I'm gonna stop talking now. That was enough for me, and I'm gonna pass the floor to Baptise. So if you want to share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Hi to everyone. I don't know, wait a bit for my screen, it's coming. Can you see it properly?
Not for now.
Okay, should be okay though. And yet?
No.
I start again.
I know. So now we see it, and Yes, now we see it full screen. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you for the introduction. You already said quite a few things I wanted to share about this web application. Basically, we are working on Avifaune and the electric cable, let's say, for quite a few years now, and we are working on this problematic because of the mortality of birds with several partners. So I will introduce you the general work we are doing and why we needed this kind of sharing between us. And then all the opportunities that is yet inside the application and what we plan to put in. So this is what I was just saying. Basically, we are an historical partnership in my place, meaning like Département of France, which is in the Northern Alps, because we work since 1995 on it. And we used to work at a municipality scale, meaning EDF, by that time was the DSO, and they used to give us the lines, and we used to work only on electrocution. But on the lines, we didn't know exactly what posts were where. So we had to go in the field and to make inventories of what posts were dangerous or not for birds, especially by the kind of posts we could see and also from the attractiveness we could find. So we can see on the right-hand side kind of results of 10 years for several municipalities around my place. Around 900 posts were insulated for electrocution. After this first time, let's say, step by step, several partners went inside this problematic and wanted to work also in their own place. So sometimes just next to my place, sometimes on other grid, not only DSO, but also TSO. And I do live in the Alps, so also with ski resorts, ski lifts, for example. And we had the problematic of prioritize properly where we could work on that. Also because sometimes we see it's dangerous, but we don't have the technicity to solve the problem or whatever. So our plan was somehow to concentrate all what we could do with everyone in some local place, being the same one, to make some free mortality zone, let's say. So the best way we found by that time to communicate between all of us was, let's say, a first version of this web application. It used to be developed by the Vanoise National Park, I have to say. And it was also, how to say, carried up during a previous live project called JIP Help. It has some functionalities you could see on the right right-hand side again, that where people could register the mortality casualties. In fact, when I say people, we are like few contributors adding the data into the app, but several could check it. We could register the inventory we're doing on the different posts, and inventory we were doing also about lines. That was and to evaluate the dangerosity directly into the field and to prioritize where we had to do an intervention to diminish this dangerosity. So we were collecting data also for birds electrocution dangerosity and for collision dangerosity. And then we could, so you could see all the data on the map, but each as a normal GIS, you could click on every single line or dot and see what was inside, meaning the the day of the inventory, what kind of posts or pylons you would find, why the line was dangerous or not, and maybe some picture of the place. So the DSO could also prioritize where to work and how to make it. And then after going through it, the DSO could also say, okay, I was working for the installation of this post or to visualize these lines. So now we can consider it that the dangerosity is down somehow, or is less than before. And we were adding those data also into the app, making it green on the map. This application was used in like my place and just the next ones, also being in the French Alps. And there was a will of partners to develop this application for users of the whole region, and maybe also for the places in France. So we were doing it through this new live project, Safe Line for Birds. And my goal was to try to share it with you directly on the web, but I'm not sure it's gonna work. I will try. It was not very concluding just a few minutes ago. Do you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So basically, still the same. You get on one hand side the map where you can navigate wherever you are, and it's collected directly to the data on the other side. Still the same. You can either zoom in or zoom out. Okay, it's being very slow. I don't know if it's because I share the screen or not. There you can change what is behind. Basically, we put the map of priority sites where we do have an intervention. Yeah, I don't know if I should go back on the screen. For example, this was priority zone because lots of birds are nesting here: golden eagle, eagle owl, lammergeier, some, what is it called in English? Tetrix or Lagopus mutar. I don't know the English names. I'm sorry. Some grouse of the mountains. So basically, birds that are quite often dying on such kind of post, and all the mortality cases you can find here also. Electrocution with this kind of pins, and this one for collision. Of course, each time you could see only the one we are registering, not other ones. And we should, it's very slow. We should be able to see a bit more. I will show you, I made some screenshot. I will go back to it because it doesn't make exactly what I want. Are you back on my screen or not?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So basically, this is the first screenshot, is where you end up when you open the app. If you zoom in, you can see the mortality casualties. You can see the inventory you were putting in. Like on the map, you can see the posts of the DSO. The casualty was two eagle owls, sorry, that died on one post together. And when I went there, I realized that all the posts were dangerous. So So just put them into this app to communicate with our local DSO. So DSO, they use also these maps and all the knowing to plan when they will go for an intervention somewhere, to know if it's a priority zone or not, if there are some posts or lines they should do an intervention on it, to make it, how to say, cheaper somehow to realize one intervention. If you go especially for it, or if you go through other things, it's not the same price, not the same costs, and things like that. As I was saying, the aim is to collect all the mortality casualties we could find, to collect also the inventories of dangerosity for each post and every lines. To work on better communication with the grid operators. Basically, we developed it mostly with DSO in my place, but it could also work for GSO or for some ski resorts. I know with ski resorts, some of the NGOs are using something quite similar to it in my place. And I have to say, sometimes it allows a creation of a database of all the work that has been done. Because when I arrived, I said just before, this is an historical partnership since 1995 in my place. I was not working here before, but if you ask me what was done in 1995 or even 2005, I cannot answer you. If you ask me what was done in 2017, since it is into this database, I can find it very easily. What was done as an inventory, what was done for neutralization by the DSO and on those things. And it can help everyone to see where the priority zone were for intervention. I hope, I'm not sure on it, but we'll see, that on a long-term period, it could also work as an evaluation of the equipment that is used for neutralization of risks, meaning I know in 2 stocks in my place went for an electrocution, when was it, like 5 years ago, and the post was already insulated, especially for birds. But one of the insulated thing, I don't know how it's called, just fall off. So it was not there anymore and made the risk back again. So we can know how long it lasts for a place, or if maybe we believe it was done, but finally it's not. Maybe we can improve on this. On this new app, what is also important to say is that it's an open source. It's planned to be responsive, meaning you can use it from a computer or from a smartphone, meaning you can use it into the field. And I asked the developers recently to use it also without connection, which is a bit more difficult for him, he told me, but it's planned somehow. It's planned to take back all the functionalities from the previous web app, meaning all what was displayed. It has no geographical limits because we didn't put any envelope of the data. Just it appears when you start to zoom in enough somehow, and it's using a GPS location, so it can be anywhere in the world. To get into it, you can use you can put some security access, administrator account, user account for maybe just to see what is displayed, or maybe a contributor's account. Right now, it's mostly in French and also in English, I think, but it's not too difficult to make some translations. And all the database which is inside it is used through PostgreSQL. I'm not sure I said it very well, which is the language, informatical language. And it means you can use it through GIS if you need to do some extraction of the data or things like that. That was my part. I hope it's fine.
Perfect, Baptiste.
And some contacts.
Thanks a lot. You were perfectly on time, the 15 minutes. Thank you. Yes, so that's very good that you actually share your contact, because I see in the chat that someone would like to arrange a meeting with you in order to have an exchange on data and opinion, because they are developing a similar application. So yeah, they would like to discuss with you. So Nicoletta that wrote this on the chat, if you want to take a screenshot and have Baptiste information, please do so. Thanks a lot, Baptiste. I think it was a very good presentation and information on the application. Of course, what you highlighted concerning the database on grid intervention, I think this is also very key to understand what has been done in the past and what is working actually. So if you see that some mitigation measures are applied, then and there's no mortality, then it means that it's working. And I also want to say again, this is an open source application. So this is also a very good point, which means that all of us, if we wish to, we will be able to use it in the future. Good. Thanks a lot, Baptiste. If you can unshare your screen, that would be perfect. We might have some time for one question. So I will open the chat. I think the first question that came was for Nicole Rodriguez. So if you want to unmute yourself, open the video and ask your question yourself to Baptiste.
Yeah, thank you, Baptiste. This was great. And I had a lot of questions. No need to answer all of them, but I was curious, since this is open source, can utility companies enter data on electrocutions anonymously if they would like to contribute, but not subject themselves to attention, if that makes any sense?
Baptiste, are you still here?
I just came back. Sorry, I had a problem on my computer.
Good. Did you hear the question?
Not at all.
Okay. Okay.
Nicole, if you want to ask again.
Sure, I'll be real quick. And Baptiste, thank you for the presentation. I was curious, can utility companies, electric utility companies, enter data on electrocutions anonymously so they can contribute to the database, but also not subject themselves to any negative attention, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure that all the questions, but the point is that data that are getting into the app is just, how to say, is just put by some very few contributors. My aim is that I would, that DSO would participate too, but actually I have some troubles to do this properly, let's say. They use it now very well, but not as a contributor, more as a tool to plan their work or things like that. Somehow it's kind of my next step or something like that.
But can the data be, I'm just jumping in, can the data be entered anonymously?
No, it's always related to an account. So you can, maybe you don't know exactly who is behind the account, but being a data user on other platforms, I prefer to know who is behind. So it's, if you get a question, if you get an interrogation about the data or whatever, you can find back the person to ask it directly. If someone finds a dead bird, for example, and wants to add the data, then somehow you have to give that information to one of the contributors who will add it to the app. Right now, we do work like this. Maybe it can change, but I'm not exactly sure of this, because also then data, you need to be able to use it somehow. It's maybe better to have a filter at the entrance of the data or something like that.
Good. Thanks a lot, Baptiste. I see other questions in the chat and also thoughts for discussion. So that's really good. Please skip them and we will come back to this at the end of the presentations. I would like now to introduce you to the second pillar that we're gonna discuss today, which is funding. So in order for all actors to meaningfully contribute and engage in the issue of bird mortality along the grid, we need funding sources, obviously. Some examples where funding is needed is, for example, research into mitigation solutions, the creation of planning tools, capacity building for civil society, and flexibility for grid operators to implement solutions. Without funding, it is really hard to get the leverage to ensure grid planning, construction, operation in line with bird protection. There are different types of funding frameworks available directly through the grid operators that must be granted by regulators and budgets, of course. But there's also fundings from the European Commission, for example, the Horizon Europe or the LIFE program. And this is what we're gonna focus on today. We turn into two major examples of LIFE projects, which are contributing directly to mitigate bird mortality, through collaborative approaches to finding new solutions. And those examples are first the LIFE Danube Free Sky that my colleague Marek is gonna present, and then I will come back on the floor and present you Safe Lines for Birds. So first up is Marek, if you would like to share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you, Manon, for the introduction. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. And first of all, thank you also for the opportunity to be a part of this webinar and for the opportunity to speak a little bit or introduce you very briefly our LIFE Danube Free Sky project. As Manon said, this project is funded from LIFE program of European Union. And I am from NGO Raptor Protection Slovakia, and we are the coordinating beneficiary of this project. It's an international project. We have 15 partners from 7 European countries on board. But I'm very happy that, especially that we have 5 DSOs, 3 TSOs, and 1 rebel operator from Austria. And the project is implemented along the most important migration corridor wintering place and stopover sites for many bird species in Europe along the Danube River. The project area composed of 25 SPAs located in Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Bulgaria, and Romania. And also we have partner from Serbia, 2 partners from Serbia, and the project area composed of 9 important bird areas in this country. The main action is to minimize the risk of collisions with power lines and also minimize the risk negative impact of electrocution on several bird species. These are our main target species of the project. Most of or all of them are listed in the group of bird species that are susceptible to collision or electrocution or both negative impact. For some of these species, also the impact of power lines or the mortality related to power lines is the main mortality factor and can decrease the viability of the local population of some of these species, but also many bird species along the Danube will benefit from the mitigation measures that were or will be adopted by our project partners. In 2022, we finished the recognition. We finished recognition and baseline service. This service covered 8 type of different voltages of power lines. Altogether, our field assistants checked more than 1,500 kilometers of power lines and also more than 12,000 poles. And what is the most important, that all the data were collected strictly according to the international monitoring scheme that was developed during for the purpose of the project. And this is very important because then we will be able also to compare the mortality or some technical issues from different countries, and can also analyze the data and compare this data with other studies of the same topic. Or thanks to the cooperation with our project partners, we were able to train more than 80 field assistants. We also had two dog units in Austria and in Hungary, and altogether we identified during this recognition and baseline service more than 2,000 individuals belonging to 103 species. And when we compare the mortality rate, it's almost the same. 55% bird died because of electrocution, and the rest because of collision. But of course, it depends on the type of voltage in each country. And also when we compare, for example, the mortality in Serbia, there is a higher risk of electrocution. Opposite the Danube Delta, the project partners from Danube Delta, there is a higher risk of collision of birds. When we speak about collision, it's also a problem not only for birds, but also it's a problem for energy companies. Here you can see, especially in case of swans, there were several problems with power outages, especially on medium voltage power lines, because this big and heavy bird can simultaneously connect two wires, and then there are some problems with outages for local customers. Thanks to the project, we plan to, or we are already implementing measures to decrease the mortality of birds from collisions. More than 260 kilometers I hope will be safe for birds, or will be more visible for birds. We use several techniques how to install the diverters. Of course, depends of the technical parameters of the diverter. We use some special isolated platform, but also we use this drone machine. It's very good technique how to increase the visibility, because, for example, thanks to the drone, we are able to install almost 300 pieces of firefly per one day. So you can in one way you can increase the safety on 3 kilometers of line. We also record the movement of birds, and also we record the reaction of birds. This is an example how it looks when the bird collides with the shield wire on the transmission line. Yeah. So we also try to record everything that is happening around the power lines, and then we also plan to do the post monitoring. Here are some examples of the diverters that will be installed in our project. As you can see, there are several types, from dynamic and static type of diverters. Here are some examples why we selected some of the diverters. This is the daily effect. This is the reflection effect, and what is the most important, that all the diverters are also able to glow in dark, some of them up to 6 or up to 8 hours. So it's very important, especially for nocturnal bird species. And we also in project plan to prevent electrocution. More than 4,000 poles will be safe, especially on medium voltage lines located in the top priority areas, especially for sacred falcon and imperial eagle and other bird species. Here are some examples. In Croatia, the distribution company will plan to replace the live wire with this isolated one, or isolated type. These are the colleagues from Bulgaria. They replace the metal cross arm for this plastic, and this is some opportunity or examples how to decrease the mortality, how to cover. This is the mitigation measures that will, or the protective elements that cover the pin insulator. We also use the transmitters to identify the most important areas for birds, and if there are some problematic or some risky poles, we have very good cooperation with the energy companies, and then they react very quickly. Here you can see some example from Slovakia. On the right, there are plastic racks that prevent the birds from landing, but this is the newest type on the left. This is a special element that allow the birds perch safely, because it's very important to allow the birds perch safely, especially in open countryside, if the presence of trees is limited. We also, or the colleagues from OEBB, the railway operator in Austria, also installed these plastic caps on their railway lines, because as you can see, the composition of the construction is very similar to utility poles. So there is also a huge risk of electrocution, and also we identified that this catenary system can be a problematic or the mortality factor for great bustard population that we identified last years in Austria. And also another actions that are funded thanks to LIFE program is the installation of nest boxes, 20 for Sacred Falcon, 300 for European roller, and 50 for red-footed falcon. Another action, I think, very important also is the land management. In Slovakia, we transformed the arable land to pasture to increase the food sources for 3 bird species. And also, what is very important is to monitor the effect of scavengers. We use the special cameras and we are able to detect how many birds disappear and how quickly they disappear from the power lines when they died because of electrocution and collision. Especially it's a huge problem in Danube Delta with this golden jackal, because many of bird species disappear very quickly. What is the main benefit of the project is that we have 15 partners from 7 countries. Yes, sometimes it's very challenging to manage this cooperation, but also it's a very good opportunity to share the knowledge, to adopt best practices also in the future. We also developed this special this group, Birds and Power Lines, on Facebook. It's an open page also for you that you can join us. It's open group for discussion, so you can also learn a lot, or also bring new idea to other colleagues around the world. And what is very important is to communicate with the energy company and involve them directly in the project and do the systematical monitoring to have the database about the mortality along the power lines. And these are the members of the group of my colleagues from all project partners. And thanks to their strong effort, we hope that we will make the power lines along the Danube River safe for birds. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Marek. It was a great presentation. You know that I'm a big fan of this LIFE project, so it was really, really nice to hear again all the actions that are going on and the great results as well. Before we open the floor for a question, I would go on with my presentation. So I will go on with the presentation of Safe Lands for Birds, which is another great example of project funded by the European Commission. So bear with me 1 second that I share my screen. You see? Okay, good. So Safe Lines for Birds is a LIFE project, as I said, that aims to reduce bird mortality caused by power lines. It is a project co-funded by the LIFE program. It runs for 6 years. We started last year and it will run until 2028. We have 3 countries in focus: France, Belgium, and Portugal. We are 15 partners involved: DSOs, TSOs, NGOs, research institutes, and those are the logos of all the partners. We are coming from France, Belgium, Portugal, Germany with us, the Renewables Grid Initiative, and also the United States with EDM, our partner. And we have 13 target species. Also good to know, the coordinator of the project is LPO France. We have 4 objectives, which are to reduce bird collision, bird electrocution, bird disturbance, and to improve and share knowledge. There are 13 target species, as I mentioned. You can see them on these beautiful pictures. Those are the species the most vulnerable to electrocution and collision in the target countries, given their size, their morphology, behavior, and distribution. They are all listed in Annex 1 or 2 of the EU Birds Directive, and 5 species are priority for funding and life. If I go on to the first objective, which is to reduce bird collision, we will focus for this objective only in France and Belgium. Some of the actions will be to install bird flight diverters on 60 kilometers of high-risk lines. Those lines will be identified, are actually identified during the preparatory actions that are that was last year and throughout this year using sensitivity mapping. We estimate that the installation of those devices will reduce collision by 75 to 83% for the target species. We will use sphere, spirals, and fireflies in those 2 countries. We will also test a new anti-collision devices that is named ACAS. This is why our partner from the US is involved, because they have designed this device. That's the picture that you can see on the top. It actually uses UV shining light, to make the lines visible to birds at night, so during dusk and dawn. And it has really good experimental results so far in the US, with a reduction of collision between up to 98% for cranes. As I said, it's still an experimental in the US, and it will be tested for the very first time in Europe on 2 sites, one in France and one in Belgium. We will also test a new innovation method to place the bird flight diverters, such as drones, on middle voltage lines in France. And when possible, we will also place 15 to 20 kilometers of medium voltage line underground. We will also test the performance of bird flight diverters using semi-automatic cameras. So this was for collision. And to reduce bird electrocution, we also have a couple of actions that this time focus also in Portugal, so France, Belgium, and Portugal. For example, we will retrofit and insulate dangerous power lines. We will also install about 2,000 deterrence devices to prevent birds from perching and nesting, for example, those spikes or the spinners. And we will also install platforms and perches to protect birds that are roosting or nesting, for example, the white storks. The third objective, reducing bird disturbance, will only be focused in France by adapting grid maintenance and surveillance methodology in line with the breeding periods of the target species. And when it's possible, we also limit the helicopter flying over breeding sites, because this can also have an effect on the breeding rate of the target species. And finally, the last objective is to improve and share knowledge. And this is actually where AGI is leading. We will develop the last year of the project a Safe Lines for Birds open digital platform that seek to gather all technical information accumulated during the project. So what devices we used, equipment, what were the installation techniques, which suppliers, and so on and so forth. This to facilitate dissemination of technical innovations, but also to support the replication of actions. We also disseminate knowledge through brochures, social media, conferences, webinars, best practice events, and workshops. where we network with experts on the topic. And this is very, very important as well, as Marek said, to exchange on knowledge within all these different countries and experience. For example, last year in November, we had the first Safe Lines for Birds event, which was a workshop organized in Berlin for NGOs, for civil societies, where we discussed the status quo of bird mortality along the green and what are the solutions. There will be a document that summarizes the discussion with key principles coming from the civil society, and this will be shared publicly this year. We will have a follow-up event by the end of 2024, so this year, this time together with NGOs, grid operators, to discuss this document and to discuss generally the importance of collaboration. And this is in line with another objective that we have, which is enable better exchange between environmental NGOs and grid operators, which is also the core activity of RGI. But where are we at? So as I said, we only started last year. So we are in the middle of the preparatory actions until the end of 2024. And this means identification of project intervention sites. So where we're gonna place the bird flight diverters and the mitigation measures in general. And this we will use some sensitivity maps, for example, that are already existing in Belgium, and that will be created through the project in France. This also means validation of the most efficient anti-collision and anti-electrocution devices, validation of protocols, and of course, networking, workshops, and capacity building. As I said, we already started last year with the workshop, and we will continue throughout this year. This is our contact information. So myself and Ingrid Marchand, which is the coordinator, the project coordinator of the project from the LPO France. So if you're interested to know more, you can contact us for sure. And you can also follow us using this QR code that leads directly to our website. You can follow us on social media. We're active on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, and we regularly post about our actions. So that was it for me. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And I would like to maybe open the floor for one question, either for me or for Marek, it doesn't matter. I see one question or more remark from Diliana. I don't know if it was really a question, but yeah, we can exchange on experience, of course. This is great to hear that you also have a live project going on. I will keep your contact and then we can exchange. Is there a question? If so, if someone has a question, please raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, we go on with the next presentation and we can keep the discussion for afterwards. No, okay, good. Then thanks a lot for listening to us. And that brings me to the last pillar, which is regulatory framework. As we know, the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, alongside with the Birds and Habitats Directive, provide a comprehensive policy framework allowing all EU member states to collaborate towards protection of EU's endangered species and their habitats. However, the implementation remains fragmented across EU member states, but there are some good examples of member states that have implemented legislative framework to protect a bird population. There's Germany, for example, but there's also the Spanish legislative framework, and this is what we will discuss today as a great example on how this can be implemented and be working. So I'm going to pass the floor to Paula if you want to share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so okay. it okay? Yeah.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank RGI, in particular Manon, for the invitation to participate in this webinar, and also for the interest it has aroused. Well, my name is Paula Delgado. I am project manager in the fauna department at Tragsatec, which is a public company offering technical support to the Spanish Ministry of Environment. One of our main focus is on projects related to interaction between power lines and birds, but led by Noemi Rueda, which is the responsible of these projects. And well, the aim of this talk is clearly the less exciting of the afternoon, but I hope I can give at least an approximate idea about Spanish legislative framework regarding power lines and Avifaune. First of all, to put you in situation, here is a brief outline of the structure of the Spanish legal system. As in most countries, I imagine, it follows a hierarchical structure of norms. At the top, we have the Constitution, which is the supreme law. Below this, we have the organic laws, ordinary laws, and legislative decrees. And then below, we can find regulations and bylaws, such as royal decrees, which are important, as we will see later, that are released by the executive branch according to higher level laws. Additionally, as you may already know, the Spanish state is divided into 17 administrative regions or autonomous communities, with their own regional governments, which have some autonomy and competencies in different areas. And one of these, they can establish their own legislation within the framework that I have said before. So, so let's go. So let's go to the point. The legal foundation for protecting bird life against potential threats such as power lines in Spain is laid out in several key pieces of legislation, which can be divided into big groups. We have energy sector legislation and also environmental legislation. And now we will see the most relevant ones. With regard to the energy sector regulations, the first key law was Act 24 of the year 2013 on electricity sector that establishes the regulation of this sector, guaranteeing electricity supply with quality and all within the normative of environmental protection. It speaks about the need to include environmental protection criteria in planning and operations. From here, it arises the Royal Decree 1955 in the year 2000, by which all the activities related with energy supply are regulated. And what is relevant here is that it has an additional provision stating that technical measures to avoid collision and electrocution of birds with power lines will be established in order to protect bird life. With regard to industry and industrial security sector, we can find Act 21 of year 1992 on industry that establishes the basis for the management of the industrial sector, including energy-related activities. It includes damage to fauna, among others, as a key point for industrial security, and considers it a very serious infraction when a severe risk or damage to fauna and others, or among others, is caused by an industrial activity. Other important milestone in industrial safety is Royal Decree 337 in year 2014, which approved the regulations on technical conditions and safety guarantees in power lines, and also establishes their complementary technical instructions, which require periodic inspections and verifications of electrical installations every 3 years to verify their safety and evaluate the deficiencies. This Royal Decree was modified in 2020 with the Royal Decree 542, so that the verifications and inspections to be carried out must include technical prescriptions of the power lines for the conservation of bird life. This means that the inspections of the power line should recognize deficiencies that could cause electrocution of birds in power lines. The second group, as I already told, the second group of regulations and laws affecting bird life conservation in relation to power lines and environment-related ones. First of all, it applies a general law, which is Act 42 of year 2007 on natural heritage and biodiversity, which is a transposition of the European Birds Directive into Spanish law. It says that public administrations must ensure the conservation of biodiversity. Great. And well, without any doubt, the reference regulation on the subject of bird electrocution in Spain is the Royal Decree 1432 of year 2008, establishing technical measures for the protection of birds against collision and electrocution in high voltage power lines. It arises, on the one hand, from the electricity sector, specifically Royal Decree 1955 in its additional provision that we saw before. And on the other hand, it has also an environmental nature based on Act 42 of year 2007 on natural heritage and biodiversity. Well, Royal Decree 1432 establishes technical standards of industrial safety aimed at the protection of birds, applying to high voltage power lines up to 66 kilovolts. These are the distribution ones. So it is principally focused on electrocution, although it provides some prescriptions for collisions which are voluntary, and we will see them later. This Royal Decree, the prescriptions of this Royal Decree applies to all new power lines built, and regarding power lines already built, Royal Decree applies to those lines within designating protection zones for electrocution. These protection zones are a way to prioritize investment in correcting power lines. Here in this map, you can see the current situation of protection areas in Spain in purple. So normally they include priority areas for conservation of endangered birds, such as special protected areas, areas of implementation of conservation plans, and sites for breeding, feeding, dispersal, etc. of these endangered species. These areas are established by the regional governments, who must publish them in their official regional bulletins. So here you can see the limits of the regions, so they are implemented by them. The Royal Decree establishes design measures of the pylons to avoid electrocution, so that the different parts of the pylon and wires guarantee minimum safety distances. Well, in this talk, we don't have many time to go into all the details, but as you can see in the next images, it defines different safety distances depending on pylon and cross-arm types, as you can see in this image. Here you can see distances in, for example, in hanging insulator chains or in horizontal insulator chains. Here you can see also distances between other parts of the pylon. In the wire under the top of the pylon, for example, it set these safety distances. Here is another type of pylon. So one important thing set by this Royal Decree is that advises to eliminate the electrified parts above the crossarm of the pylon. So according to all this, new power lines should be constructed following these prescriptions, and already existing power lines that do not meet technical specifications must be retrofitted. For example, by changing the whole crossarm, like here we have rigid insulators, so they have changed the whole crossarm, or increasing safety distances by using, for example, longer insulator chains, like in the left, or other elements like on the right to meet these safety distances. Regarding collision, as I have already said, Royal Decree 1432 provides prescriptions for new power lines which are voluntary. It describes recommended distances between markers depending on the number of wires in the power line, as well as different types of possible markers. Another important law, which is also gaining more relevance in recent years, is Act 26 of the year 2007 on environmental liability, which is a transposition of European Directive on Environmental Responsibility. It establishes a legal framework for the prevention and repair of environmental damages. It aims at ensuring that entities or individuals causing significant harm to the environment, including wild species, take responsibility for its restoration, and also implement measures to prevent future damages if there are imminent threats. To carry out this repairing, best available technologies should be applied. From the perspective of electrocution and collisions, the owners of power lines are responsible for their operation, and dangerous power lines located in areas with presence of vulnerable species should be rectified whether or not damages have occurred, and this is one important thing. So, after presenting all this legal framework, several conclusions can be drawn. First, in relation to the reference normative, which is the Royal Decree 1432, describing the technical specifications that power lines must have to prevent electrocution and collision, some significant limitations can be evidenced. First, the sanctioning regime is somewhat vague and does not refer to the industry law, which is very important. Also, it applies to already constructed power lines within protected areas, which may be insufficient. It also links the modification of old power lines to the existence of public funding, slowing down implementation. And finally, it addresses the issue of collision insufficiently. It is worth noting also that soon, I hope, there will be an update of this Royal Decree to address these and other limitations. We can also say that since 2008, retrofitting of power lines are being carried out by different partners, autonomous communities, or electrical sector companies, etc., with different budgets. Although the correction rate is low and irregular, I must say that there is a predisposition to change this dynamic. Throughout the presentation, we have seen that there is legislation in the electrical, industrial, and environmental sectors applying to the problematic of power lines and birds, and even that some of them are more or less old. They mention environmental protection, but without providing action mechanisms, and they also define infractions, but they have not been implemented for many time. But in recent years, there is an increase in awareness of the issue from various partners, including public administration, civil society, ONGs, and also from the legal sector. So that's since around 2017, the precepts of higher ranking environmental laws are being applied, especially the Environmental Liability Act. The important aspects that they consider are that both the damage done and the risk of causing harm are considered punishable infractions, obliging parties to bear with the correction costs. Also, that the application is not restricted to protected areas, but applies to the entire territory. So protection areas, as we saw before, does not apply here. It requires the use of the best technologies, which in this case refers to the Royal Decree 1432 that we have already seen. The application of this normative has led to accusations and court sentences. Here, I name some of examples, but there are more and more, and this comes slowly and still uneven application. For example, some regions in Spain are more active than others in these accusations. But as I said before, there is a predisposition to change. So to finish, I would like to say that even with a more or less developed legislative framework, implementation is not easy and absolutely not fast. it requires a lot of training of people involved and also a great coordination among all the partners involved in the problematic. And that's it. Here, the website of the ministry treating of these subjects, and also my contact and the contact of Noemi Rueda, which is the responsible in the ministry of these projects. So if you want to contact us, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Maria Paula. And I have to say, I don't think your presentation was boring at all. I think it was very, very interesting. So thanks a lot. We have now 20 minutes for Q&A and discussion. So if you would like to stop sharing your screen, then we can see.
Yes,
what...
sorry. Oh.
No problem.
Oh, then now stop. Escape? No. No, okay. I don't know how to do that. ¿Me ayudáis? Que no, es que me he ido. Es que no tengo el mismo. Sorry.
Oh, good.
No tengo.
You should have like below your screen, you should have share screen and stop sharing. If it should be in red. I mean, I have it in English. You might have it in Spanish. Yes, now. Great. Thanks a lot. So we do have all our speakers on the spot now, and I would just very quickly like to take the opportunity to thank you all. And as a moderator, I just want to have the chance to ask the first question, and that would be to Maria Paula, actually. You mentioned a few court cases in Spain, and I would like to know what was the sentences, if you can just let us know if it was some fines or if you have more information on what actually were the sentences after the courts.
Well, there was a first big sentence because these inspections that should be made by the engineers to detect the deficiencies on the power lines. The engineers must do these inspections, and they I don't know, they I don't know how to say that, but they didn't want to do that, and the Supreme Court said, okay, no, you have to do this. So this is the first big sentence explained like colloquially, and then there are the most sentences have been on after the death of animals in power lines. So there are some regions, there are 2 or 3 regions that have started to do these accusations. And there has been a punishment, I think, in multa. Yes, they first they advise the companies, and then if it happens again and the company doesn't do anything, there is an accusation and then a judgment and a fine. And
good, thanks a lot. So I see a few hands raised, and I think the first one was from Olena. So you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Manon, for this useful events, and thanks a lot of thanks for all speakers. I have a question about fines. About fines for birds mortality. What are the fines for the death of birds on power lines, and were there any fines from regulatory authorities to DSO or TSO?
So I think the question was for Maria Paula.
Yes, I'm not sure I have understood the question.
So the question was if there was fines, were they more directed to TSOs or DSOs, so distribution lines or transmission lines?
I think it was more for distribution lines because it was more for electrocution. So electrocution is more in distribution lines. So the problem was there. The fins were more for distribution companies. Yeah.
Thank you. Then we have David Howell from BirdLife. If you want to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, just very quickly to add to what Maria Paula was saying. So as some of you know, I'm based in the SEO BirdLife head office here in Madrid, in Spain, and the fine was 140,000 euros for the electrocution of I'm not sure if it was an imperial eagle or a golden eagle. And I won't name the company, but it's a very, very, very well-known energy company. And that triggered them, action from them to put in place an internal plan of action to correct the most risky electrocution points and collision points. NGOs don't go into these things lightly, and in the case of SEO, I know that they take action only when they think there's a really serious problem, really bad neglect of the legislation, and also a high success possibility of getting a clear decision. And that was the case here, and it triggered this commitment to a plan of action, and we're now working with that company to try to be sure they do what they've said they'll do.
Thanks, David, for this intervention. I see other hand raised, but we also had question from the chat. There's one from Brian to Marek. So Brian, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Marek. A great presentation. Just my question is, without going into manufacturers' names, what, in your opinion, are the most important attributes of a good bird flight diverter design for the long run? That there are many different types out there. Just in your experience, what's worked well?
Yeah, I'm not sure that if I will be able to tell you maybe which type of diverter is the best, but maybe there are some recommendations that what should include, or there are some recommendation about the condition that should be fulfilled if we can say that this diverter could be effective. I think it's especially the movement of the diverter, of its part or the whole element, and also another important factor is that is the color of the diverter and also the glow in dark effect during the night conditions. So these are, I think, the three main conditions. If you would like to talk about the effective diverter, at least these three conditions should be included in the diverter.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Marek.
And I also want to mention that RGI is actually doing a work since a couple of months of gathering all the scientific studies on the efficiency of bird flight diverters, and we will produce some kind of report on this based on the overview studies. So it will be shared this year and published in different languages. And this is also, of course, we do not draw conclusions on this. This is just desktop studies, what is available and what is based on the studies, the more efficient. And this goes also along with the request from Rebecca in the chat that you will be interested to receive information on bird flight diverters. We'll be very happy to share with you this document once we have it ready. Before I go on with the hands, we also had a very early on question from Thierry Chambert to Baptiste. So Thierry, if you're still here and want to ask your question. Or he's not here anymore. Okay, I'm just going to ask it. So are the data collected being used to regularly update the risk level of the given area? And if so, how do you deal with potential bias due to variation in survey effort among different areas? So this is to Baptiste, I believe.
Yes, it's related to sensitivity map, I would say. Basically, we do the sensitivity map with data of nesting birds we know, meaning we have some priority birds, for example, vultures, storks, cranes. Okay, in my place we don't have cranes, but doesn't matter. We know where they do nest. We know if there are some very important wintering place, and we collect all those data about one specific place. We gather them together, and we actually add mortality of those priority birds into the sensitivity map, because if we have one very scarce bird, sorry, we consider it as a priority, and we want to. This is just for sensitivity. What is important is to put the priority in the, how to say, the proper order. First, we go for mortality places, because mortality we have already seen is, we find it more relevant. And then we go for sensitivity about those priority birds. And those priority birds are just related to the data of those we know. And actually we don't know everything. But the next step, which will appear in the model, in the map, sensitivity map, is to model the places where all those birds do actually live.
Thank you, Baptiste. So Thierry is not here anymore, but I hope that answered his question. Thank you. We had a question from Megan, or at least you have your hands raised. So if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hiya. I'm just interested in transmission lines. So more for Manon and Marek, what voltage are the lines that you're testing on? And do you just install them on the earth, like the shield wire at the top, or are you installing on the conductors as well? And then final question just about the drones, the drone installation, because I know there's the bird flight diverters that are compatible with drones tend to be the ones that they tend to fall off the lines, rather than being the durable BFDs like the spiral ones. So just kind of what's your experience with that, and yeah, what BFDs are you using with the drones?
Thanks, Megan. So I'm going to let Marek answer this because he has more experience with the drones. We're just starting Safe Lines for Birds, so we haven't started actually to implement the bird flight diverters with the drone. So Marek, go ahead.
Yes, we in project we have 8 type of different voltages of power lines, but we use the drone especially for installation of 2 types of, or 3 types of diverters on extra high voltage power lines, especially in Hungary. Then also the colleagues from Croatia, HEP and HOPS, DSO and TSO company, they install another type also on their power lines. But we use it's possible only to install the diverters that have a special clamp that could be fixed on the drone and then could be fixed on the wire. And there are 2 main companies that produce this type of diverters. One is from Sweden. I think you know it very well. Is a Hammarprodukter company. They have 3 types of diverters that could be installed. Thanks to this clamp, it's Bark Afterglow, then Firefly, and also the clamp 10. And another diverter or another type is the diverter Crockfast from the company from United Kingdom. And this diverter Crockfast we install with the cooperation of HEP and HOPS in Croatia, and also thanks to the drone. It's a little bit it's a different type of drone, but the principle is the same, that this 2 diverters have the clamp, and it's possible to install it with the drone. And what is maybe important to know that the company from Slovakia developed also the drone that could take off some broken diverter. So it's not possible. It is also possible not only to install, but also that they install the diverters also from the shield wire of high or on extra high voltage power line. So it's not a problem at all at this time, and we also tested this during or in our project. And another company, or the last company that I know, is from Hungary, is Delta company, and they developed a special diverter that is that use the inductive current from the live wire. It's powering the LED light, and also this type is possible to install with drone. So I know three types, or three types of clamps that could be used for installation with drones.
Thanks a lot, Marek. David, I don't know if your hand is still raised or if you had a question. Still? Okay, thanks. Then Hassani, it's your turn. You can ask your question.
Thank you, Manon. Thank you very much for holding this webinar and for inviting these people to have their presentations, which were very, very clear and very, very important to save the birds all around Europe and around the world, if it's possible, of course. I have just one little question for Baptiste. If your open source app is available or not yet, before continuing?
Not exactly yet, let's say. I mean, you can find the script if you want, but we plan to, to stabilize it for the beginning of summer or something like that.
It will take
if everything works well.
It will take a lot of time to have been stabilized.
5 or 6 more months, I would say, and then should be some. Everything will not be inside, but will soon be some new development.
Right, thank you. But because it's very important to have it. For instance, here in Morocco, we know that Morocco is a flyway of birds, especially raptors and a lot of other birds that come from Europe and Eastern Europe and north of Europe, and that cross towards Africa and South Africa, and vice versa in other. And it's very, very important to have this kind of apps to settle and to mark the hotspots of birds mortalities. I think I will take this opportunity to thank also Paula, because the legislation side is very, very important. It's in Spain. Yes, there is a legislation there, and here in Morocco, I don't know, and I am looking for text that protects birds, especially with the transmission system lines. I don't know, because little things are done here in Morocco, not a lot of things. We saw these diverters that are being placed in the power lines, but we do not know if there is legislation that is for this kind of issue. I thank you also, Marek, for protecting birds across Danube and Europe by making all these devices for the protection of birds. And I wish that this collaboration and this sharing of this information will be in the future very, very fruitful. And thank you, Manon, and thank you all for your presentations.
Of course. Thanks a lot, Hassani. We had one hand, I think, from Katarina. Do you still want to ask your question, Katarina? If you're here. Okay, then she's not here anymore. Okay, we can have one last question. So I'm gonna pick from the chat if no one has a hand raised. Maybe there was another question from Brian to Paula. Have the mandatory 3-year inspections of existing mitigation measures resulted in any significant changes in the mitigation approach?
The thing is that we didn't have time to check it out because this legislation was up in 2020. So this obligation to include prescriptions for electrocution and collision is so, and then as I already said, the engineers that have to do this didn't want to do that, so they make an appeal to the court. So this is slowly, so we don't have still data to know if they are doing that and if this work, because it's been 3 or 4 years before. So it is still it's still not working.
Thank you.
We will see in some years.
Yes, and we will follow this for sure. So unfortunately, we don't have time to address all of the rest of the questions, but because we are already out of time, I would like to thank all of the participants for joining us today and being part of this very important discussion. Of course, I want to thank you all the speakers for helping me succeeding in this work, in this webinar. It was very, very interesting and very nice to have you all. I wish you all a very good day. If you want to follow up on RGI and the next events, Energy and Nature webinars that we will organize this year, you can subscribe in to our newsletters that my colleagues just shared in the chat. Apart from that, I will share with you very soon these days the link to the recording and the presentations if you want to watch it again. So thank you, all of you, and I wish you a great day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.